I drank 40 Mountain Dews from Taco Bell. This is going to be the year that I win the contest. The Xbox Series X is as good as mine as soon as I mail these out. Alright, let's get the show on the road. It's 2 weeks later, and guess what? Guess what came in the mail? The Xbox Series X. My dreams have come true. My dreams have been powered. I'm so happy. I get to sit and play 4 generations of games and rekindle my love of Microsoft and the Xbox, having been a Sony fan for at least 3 generations now. Now's the time. Now's the time to mend these wounds. Nothing in this world could remove this smile from my face. Hey, did you hear that Miles got a Series X for free? I wouldn't even pay that price free for a Series X because there's one good reason for it. No games. No games? The Series X has no games? But I thought it had all the games. The PS5 is the better console because it has one exclusive game, which is 100 times more exclusives than the Series X if you think about it. 100% more. I did the math. I'm gonna wipe the shame off my body. I drank all that Mountain Dew! And for what? A system that plays no games? I'm gonna give up. I'm gonna give up. Not on life, but on the Xbox. I'm just gonna trade it in. Trade it in for maybe $100 at GameStop. That's what I'm gonna do. That's the ace gamer move. I'm gonna do that. Wait, son. You're making a big mistake. Phil Sama, is that you? Don't let the internet trolls fool you. Trolls fool you. Trolls fool. Don't let them fool you, son. I have infused all the games on the Series X. You've blessed me with all the games? It doesn't have no games. It has hashtag all the games. Bless you, Phil Sama. Bless you. Okay, time's up. I've got Japanese games to cancel. Sayonara! I never thought I'd be returning to the Xbox as my video game platform of choice. But after researching the sheer amount of games on its library and the real efforts Microsoft is making to preserve their older titles and create an a la carte gaming subscription that's, quite frankly, one hell of a deal, I decided to throw caution to the wind and give them one more chance. Now, I was really excited to dive in and try out the backwards compatibility program. All the backwards compatible titles take your old favorites and introduce new and improved features without messing up any of the assets during the conversion, like you might see in some HD collections. The most common improvements are improved frame rate stability, meaning that the game will hit its max frame rate more consistently, enhanced texture quality, forced VSync, which means screen tearing is a thing of the past, major bumps to the resolution, and the Series X has auto HDR, which means it detects areas of high luminance and creates a faux HDR effect, which your mileage may vary depending on your display and the type of game you're playing. My personal favorite enhancement is installing the game to the internal SSD, which essentially means loading times are greatly improved, if not eliminated entirely. So I popped in my old copy of Panzer Dragoon Orta for the original Xbox, and then it was added to my game library without any additional BS. Originally released released in 2002, Panzer Dragoon Orta is a third-person shoot-'em-up in the vein of Star Fox. I don't know what it is about this genre of game, but I never grow tired of it. Orta is one of the more challenging titles within the series, as it introduced a dragon switching mechanic. You switch between a normal dragon, a heavy dragon, and a light dragon. Learning their strengths and weaknesses will help you adapt to the given situation. There are 10 episodes with multiple pathways to discover within, usually an A and a B pathway, which makes it a really robust shoot-'em-up with tons of cool unlockables, including the original 2 Panzer Dragoon games. This game is capable of outputting at 16 times its native resolution of 480p, depending on your display. 20 years later, it still looks and plays like a dream. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up one of my favorite original Xbox titles, Phantom Dust, released in 2004. It was a budget title that I purchased for $20 at GameStop back in the day, and Microsoft Game Studios re-released the game for free in 2017. That is, if you want to play the single-player campaign, which I would highly recommend doing first before deciding to spend money on the multiplayer components. Phantom Dust is such a bizarre title. It's a post-apocalyptic action card game where players pick up magical powers on the field, and there's a certain cost associated with using those powers. And you're placed into a destructible arena where you face off against multiple enemies who also have their own custom magic decks. It's not as complicated as it sounds, and it's really easy to pick up and play. This game was a massive flop in Japan, selling around 10,000 copies. However, at its budget price of $20 in the West, it managed to secure 50,000 units. Still, it did not find any success until this re-release, where it amassed over 1 million downloads. They were in production of a new Phantom Dust game, but Microsoft decided to pull funding in 2015, and sadly, this is where the franchise died. It's a shame because right now, post-apocalyptic and cyberpunk future games are all the rage, and it would be the perfect time to reboot this franchise. This game is compatible with Xbox One, Series S, and X, and if you have one of those, it's free to download and try, and I highly recommend it. On the 360 side of Emulation, this is Child of Eden, released in 2011 and created by Tetsuya Mizuguchi, the creator of games like Rez. So you know there's going to be a musical component to this. Originally, the game was developed with Kinect in mind, but thankfully, it can be enjoyed with just a controller. Child of Eden was unfortunately left behind in the 7th generation, and I'm thankful that Microsoft helped preserve it. While it's not as noteworthy as Rez, I find it just as enjoyable. It is both a visual and auditory showcase, and it reminded me a lot of when I visited Tokyo's Digital Art Museum. The goal is simple. You are an antivirus program sent to stop all the viruses that are attacking this AI called Project Lumi, who's a cute Japanese girl. Like Rez before it, the more enemies you destroy, the more layers inside the musical track of the level are unlocked. And like most of Mizuguchi's games, they're one of those experiences that are wholly unique, and they're something you just have to try for yourself in order to understand what they're going for. Thankfully, the cost of admission isn't that high, as you can acquire this game for about $3 on eBay. Pick it up and let me know what you think. This is Lost Odyssey, originally released in 2008 for the Xbox 360. It is by far the largest JRPG released on the platform. And when I mean large, I mean 4 discs long. Of course, this is most notable for being written by Hironobu Sakaguchi, aka the Gooch Father of Final Fantasy. Lost Odyssey is a turn-based RPG with a slight action timed hits component to it through the ring system. Speaking of rings, my 360 red ringed at the time of Lost Odyssey's release, so I never got to complete it. And I'm so thankful that Microsoft chose this as a title to carry forward into the future, as aesthetically it holds up quite well on its own. But after I tried it on my 4K display, the Auto HDR made these embers on this battlefield really pop. It took what was already a great looking game and made it better. Oh, and just for curiosity's sake, I took my Japanese copy of Lost Odyssey that I bought at a secondhand store in Tokyo, popped it in my Series X, and what do you know? It downloaded the full North American copy. I didn't think it would work, but apparently it's region free, so no matter what copy you have of this game, it'll download whatever region you are currently occupying. That's crazy. This is Shadows of the Damned, and if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know how much I love this game. And I was ecstatic when I heard it was being added to the backwards compatibility program. Now don't go in expecting major leaps and bounds in terms of improvements. It was already really solid on the Xbox 360 version. It's mainly untouched from the 360 original, but it does output at 4K. And since we're playing a game that's main components are light versus darkness, you can understand how much Auto HDR really improves this experience. There's only one part in Shadows of the Damned that had an issue maintaining its frame rate, and that segment gets into spoiler territories, but I will say once I got there, it maintained its frame rate with no noticeable lag. Shadows of the Damned has never gotten a PC port, so if you're looking for a modern way to enjoy the game, then look no further. See y'all real soon! Last and certainly not least, Deadly Premonition. Deadly Premonition has gotten a bad rap over the years due to the horrible port jobs of this great game. There's not too many differences between the Xbox One and the Series X versions, with the exceptions of 4K resolution, Auto HDR, and now the complete elimination of loading times, which is kinda sad because now I'm gonna miss that graphic of a can of pickles in between loading areas. If you're looking for a more in-depth analysis of all the benefits of the emulated version of Deadly Premonition, then look no further than my video on the subject. With that said, I'm going to declare the Series X the new definitive version of Deadly Premonition, but by a slim margin. Xbox One or Series X, you really can't go wrong with these versions of Deadly Premonition. It's every other version that completely shat all over this franchise's reputation. By the way, pillow test? Passed.
If you don't mind me asking, did you walk all the way here?
My car broke down, that's all.
Yakuza Like a Dragon exists in this multi-generational vacuum. I initially purchased it for my Xbox One, the base model, where I enjoyed it at a full 25 frames per second with screen tearing all over the place and massive loading times. Even with its poor performance on that system, I still had a great time, and it was one of the primary motivating factors for me to pick up the Series X so I could get the definitive definitive version at no additional charge, minus the console itself. And oh my, what an improvement it was. Not only does it output at a 4K resolution with all the HDR yada yada, but 60 frames. Yakuza was made to be played at 60 frames, especially with all the wild antics and go-kart racing that they crammed into this one. Having played through every numbered version of the game and unfortunately Dead Souls, it was nice to take what was once an April Fool's joke by introducing a role-playing aspect and making it an integral part of not only the battle system, but our brand new protagonist Ichiban's personality and his love for Dragon Quest. It's a very lighthearted game that never dives too much into the serious side, at least until near the end. And if you're a fan of job classes in your RPGs, this might have the wackiest of the bunch. I've already beaten the game and I'm working my way through Premium Adventure mode, and I'm hoping to muster up the courage to try out Legend mode. Oh, I should also mention that I tried out the Xbox mobile application's remote play feature, and I was able to stream Yakuza Like a Dragon to my cell phone and play it at a full 60 frames per second with minimal lag. I'm not sure that I would have a need for this feature, but the experience was so seamless that I'm just happy that I have the ability to do so. Before I get this next segment started, I want to address a couple of matters up front. This is Retrospection, a fork of the popular all-in-one emulator, Retroarch. It is not running in developer mode, meaning that I can just launch it from the normal dashboard and go. Unfortunately, due to it being in a legal gray area, I cannot show you where to get this particular app or how to install it. However, there's already a ton of videos on the internet, so I'm sure you won't have trouble finding one if you're interested. Retroarch is a one-stop shop for emulation. It currently supports emulation of a wide assortment of retro devices, ranging from the Atari 2600 all the way up to the Nintendo Wii. There's also a standalone PSP app called PPSSPP Gold. It runs even the most taxing games flawlessly, like the Third Birthday here. Things are always being added and improved to Retroarch, and if you've tinkered around with it in the past, the setup is no different here on the Series X. You just pick out the system's core that you're interested in playing, put the ROMs that you care about on there, and go. Now some of you might ask, why not just use your PC? Well, the short answer is, I wanted an all-in-one console with minimal headache, where I could just pick up games and go. Also, it was a fun project to work on in my free time. Retroarch is one of the most versatile applications in gaming. It puts the power of the gaming experience in the player's hands. From custom control options to specialized CRT filters that make your ROM look as if they were being played on a curved tube TV with copious amounts of phosphorus glow. I just love that. The very fact that I can just be playing Pikmin on the GameCube and then instantly switch over to Alan Wake on the Xbox 360 blows my mind. I used to collect retro games as a hobby, but I lost interest in it over time. I'm not interested in paying overinflated prices when none of that money is going to go to support the original developers in the end. That, and I'm tired of digging out my old consoles, looking for the perfect upscaler to get them to look nice on my modern displays, and listening to Gen X YouTubers who are more interested in protecting their investments than making gaming more convenient for all users. Don't let any of those dusty old buttholes on the internet pixel shame you into their RGB psychosis.
As you can clearly see, I am seated right here next to a shelf full of video games, miscellaneous video game merchandise, and consoles.
This is essentially you coming into my office and seeing a doctorate diploma on my wall.
I know what I'm fucking talking about.
Emulation is wonderful, and you're invited to this party free of charge. Welcome, friend. You're always welcome here at HM.